Combing through the documentation for Blender 4.0, we are looking at the texture painting tools. We have looked at painting textures in the last video over UV maps, and we ran through the settings quickly, so in this video, we are going to take a deeper look at the texture paint settings and options. Switching workspaces back to the texture painting, we saw that we have a slot where we can add or create textures. Going back to the header here, we see the field known as texture slots. The reason that this space is called texture slots is that the combination of images associated with UV maps is called slots. When we click on the plus icon, we get to make a new paint slot. The slot system includes two painting modes, material and single image. When in the materials mode, we see options for paint slots we can add. These are base color, which defines the visible color of the surface. Then specular IOR level determines the material's response to light, affecting its shininess or reflectivity. Roughness affects the micro surface of the material, determining how rough or smooth it appears. Metallic defines whether the material is non-metallic or metallic. Bump is a bump map that perturbs the surface normals to create the appearance of bumpiness or height on the surface. Normal. Similar to a bump map, a normal map is used to perturb the surface normals for adding detail to the surface. Displacement maps are used to actually displace the geometry at render time for added detail. This mode tries to detect the slots from the materials of the mesh. If you are using the cycles renderer, all textures in the materials node tree are added in the slots tab. We don't see that here, as we don't have a texture added and are not using that renderer. Then we have a texture or two, we see the active paint texture index. This gives a list view of textures. For any texture, we can click to add it to the active UV layer. And aside from the material mode, we saw that we could add an image as a texture, as we saw in the last video. You can do so by opening an image or creating a new image. Of the two options when doing this, we see that we have UV map and texture filter type. The UV map option allows you to select the UV layer for painting, which in this case is the same as the currently active UV map in the Mesh's UV Maps panel. And the texture filter type sets the interpolation mode of the texture. This can be linear or closest. And below this, we see Save All Images. This allows us to save all edited images. We have seen it in the last video when we saved an image as well. And we don't see it here, but there is also Add Simple UVs. The Add Simple UVs does a simple cube unwrap followed by a pack operation. It's still recommended to make a custom unwrap. This operator is available when the object does not already have a UV map. To the right of this, we see options for masking. If we tick the checkbox for stencil mask, you can specify an additional image texture that defines masked surfaces. Masked surfaces can be defined with the mask brush and will not be affected by painting. Again, you can choose a UV layer and you can adjust the display color. And below this, you can toggle cavity mask. Cavity masking means that the brush will be masked if there is a cavity or a hill on the mesh surface, depending on the mesh options. The cavity algorithm is vertex-based. Moving over to the Properties section, we see brush settings again. We have seen brush settings in a dedicated video, but let's briefly revisit them. You can change the type of brush, adjust the radius and strength. Don't forget that you can also do this with the hotkeys, F and Shift F. Below that, we see Symmetry. Here we can mirror the brush strokes across the selected local axes. If you want to alter the directions the axes point in, you must rotate the model in Edit mode and not in Object mode. And below this, we see options, and here you can adjust the bleed. The seam bleed extends the paint beyond UV island bounds to avoid visual artifacts, like bleed for baking. And dither. This is the amount of dithering when painting on 8-bit images. Occlude. With geometry occlusion active, only exposed, not hidden by other mesh parts, pixels are affected. This also allows for 3D stencils to be used to mask out areas of the surface too. Backface culling. With backface culling enabled, you can only paint on the front side of faces. In external. We have screen grab size, which is the size of the captured image for reprojecting. Quick edit, which lets you edit a snapshot of the viewport in an external image editor. Apply, which projects the edited image back onto the object. And lastly, apply camera image, which projects an edited render from the active camera back onto the object. And that will do it for this video. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And thanks for making it all the way through the video. Please join us in the next one. See you next time.